everyone. We're so excited to see so many familiar faces. I know that there'll be a couple people still trickling in and joining, but it is much appreciated by the Montgomery chapter of the Maryland Municipal League that we have so many esteemed MCPS as well as Board of Education members here tonight. We always value and appreciate the time that you share as we represent our municipalities on some of the issues and questions that we get about our school. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping to support all of our children. With that said, I want to welcome Carla Silvestre, who is standing in for Brenda Wolf as the leadership of the Board of Education. And then I also want to acknowledge Dr. Monifa McKnight, who is here with us this evening.
Well, good evening. I'm Carla Silvestre, I'm Vice President of the Board of Education. And thank you so much for having us here tonight to discuss what's happening with MCPS currently and how we can continue to work together to ensure that our school system is a model of excellence and equity. My colleagues and I are happy to be with you here this evening and always appreciate your commitment to our public schools. So I am going to just have them introduce themselves let's start off with Ms. Majowski.
Good evening, nice to see everyone. I'm Rebecca Svondrowski.
Lynn?
Good evening, everyone. Lynn Harris.
Scott?
Hi, everybody. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. Scott Joptis.
Okay, am I missing anyone else from the board? All right.
Judy was feeling a little under the weather as well, so we've had a lot of long days, so I'm not sure if she was going to be able to make it or not.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight we're going to talk about some very important topics that are important to all of us, including COVID prevention and management, addressing student learning loss and equity, school safety, a brief overview of the CIP, and school staffing. As you all know, these past years have been uniquely difficult times in public education, not just here in Montgomery County, but across the country and the world. Yet despite these challenges, teaching and learning has continued, and our community commitment to education endures. These are things that as a community we can take pride in, and I am humbled and honored by our community's commitment to our students and our school system. For those of you that follow the news or our board meetings, you may have seen that MCPS shared data about learning and academic results for the last year. And although there are positive signs that our efforts to extend learning beyond the school day with after-school tutoring and summer programming are working, the data showed us that we have a lot of work to do. And tonight we will share some of the ways in which we are working to improve our learning outcomes. There's always tremendous interest in school construction, and we will discuss the projects underway and engage in dialogue about how these decisions are made and how we can support each other in this work. We have a history of productive partnerships with many of you on capital projects, and we hope to continue these partnerships. The final topic is about staffing. And like so many school systems and other industries, we have struggled with staffing. Although we have been able to just about fully staff our schools, we have a limited pool of substitutes. And this shortage has hit us particularly hard in transportation, where we have grappled with disruptions in service. This is especially difficult in a county as large as ours, with schools scattered throughout our county, from Poolsville to Tacoma Park and everywhere in between. I know that Dr. McKnight will discuss our efforts to address these disruptions, but we know they are real and impacting our families. So if you know anyone with a CDL license or willing to get one through MCPS, please reach out to us. I look forward to our conversation and continued collaboration as we support one another in Montgomery County to make the county the best place for all our students as we prepare them for college, career, and community. Now I will let Dr. McKnight get us started on some of these updates. Dr. McKnight?
Thank you so much, Ms. Silvestre, and good evening to the Maryland Municipal League. It's good to see you again. Thank you so much for inviting us and participating in a conversation about our school system. I see you all as valued partners. And so when you invite us, we are excited to be here to be able to talk more about how our partnership can grow to support our students. So before I get into specifics, I am going to do the same as Ms. Silvestri, because the last time we came, we actually have a number of new leadership team members that are joining us here tonight. And emphasizing my point on partnership, I think it's important for you to know who those leaders are so that you can build relationship and be in contact with them so that we are able to work cohesively throughout the year. So I see a number of them, so I'm going to make this painless, and I am just going to call on the staff and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and share with you their current position that they're in. And I will start with Dr. Murphy.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. McKnight. My name is Pat Murphy, and I'm in the role of the Deputy Superintendent. I joined MCPS as of July the 14th, and I am very excited to be here. I enjoy working in a large school suburban district like Montgomery County, which also has a very strong reputation. So thank you, and I look forward to the discussion this evening.
Thank you. Dr. Marks.
Good evening. I'm Susan Marks. I'm Acting Chief of Human Resources and Development, a long-termer in Montgomery County, and happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Stockton.
Good evening. I'm Brian Stockton. I'm the Chief of Staff. I started 3 days before Pat Murphy. Just as my colleagues, so happy to be working here in Montgomery County and also making sure we keep the reputation of a great school district. And I look forward to be in partnership and working with all of you. Thank you, Superintendent.
Ms. Garcia.
Buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elba Garcia, Senior Community Advisor. Like my friends, I just joined in August, but I have been a county resident for 30 years, and I'm a parent of 3 students that are a product of MCPS. So I'm very excited to be part of this conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blinsky.
Hi, good evening. I'm Heather Dublinsky. I'm currently the Executive Director in the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, but I was actually asked to attend on behalf of Dr. Kapunin, our School System Medical Officer, who unfortunately had a conflict and could not make it tonight. In my previous position as the COVID Coordinator, I'll be able to answer or address any COVID-related questions you have. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. Very excited to work with you. I am Dana Edwards. I am the Chief of District Operations. I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you. No stranger, Mr. Adams.
Hey everyone, Seth Adams, Director, Department of Facilities Management. It's great to see everyone and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Dr. Pugh.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peggy Pugh. I'm the Chief Academic Officer. I started a few days before Dr. Murphy on July 11th, and I've been learning a lot about the county. I'm very familiar with Maryland, 27 years in education, and I'm just thrilled by all of the community partnerships that we are enjoying. Happy to hear the conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Hall, Chief Operating Officer. In this role, I oversee human resources, operations, and finance. Also new to the district and very excited to be joining such an excellent organization and look forward to working with all of you going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Celia Fisher, a relative old timer, having started on July 1st. I'm very happy to be here this evening. I've lived in Montgomery County for approximately 10 years and have 2 children in the MCPS system.
And your position?
I'm sorry, Assistant Chief of Communications.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Clark.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Clark. I'm the Chief Safety Officer for the school district, and I have lived in Montgomery County for over 60 years and a proud graduate of MCPS.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. So he definitely wins the prize for a longtime resident. So I wanted to spend the time just so that you know exactly who we are. It's really important for us to make sure we are building those partnerships. And I wanted you to be able to have the staff introduce themselves to you, because tonight, while we're having a discussion about where we are and where we're going as Montgomery County Public Schools, I'd like for that conversation to always continue throughout the year so that we don't have to wait for a meeting to have those conversations. The partnership needs to be one that's ongoing and longstanding. And so the more often that we can talk, get together, get your questions answered so that you can be very responsive to your constituents and your communities, then we're all successful, because then everyone has the information they need and can be involved in a way that benefits our children most. So with that said, I just want to say that's why it's so important that we come together, because support and advocacy for local, for our local school system really is about why we're here and why our partnership is important. We find ourselves, living in a moment when support for public education needs all the support that it can get. As you know, the pandemic has been a time that's been very impactful to not just Montgomery County Public Schools, nationally. And so, we are now in a point in which we are really focused on what the impact of the recovery initiative that we put in place, how are they making meaning to our students and being responsive to what we learn. So for this reason, I've actually started to call the school year, I gave it a theme, and basically the theme was all together now to begin our work this year as a school system in partnership with our community. And we're all together now because our work is interconnected. And that means support and advocacy from local government to ensure that the school system has what it needs to serve our students and staff. So tonight in our discussion, I'm going to really talk to you as partners about some of the key issues that are impacting our students, our schools, our staff, including the impact of the pandemic and some safety and security measures that we're taking for our students to make sure that we're caring for our students. And most importantly, we have a caring and qualified person in the classroom, in the schools, in all capacities, on the buses to support them. So on these issues, I'm going to share some progress that our school system has made, but also recognize that there is much work to be done. And I will always come to you sharing if progress, what the progress has been, but not being comfortable in just making progress, but always keeping our eye on how do we continue to get better. So let's first start talking about learning disruption. So as you know, we will and we have been and will continue to monitor what the impact has been on all of our learners over the past 2 years, recognizing that while virtual learning did work for some of our students, many of them, it was a very different learning environment for them. And so as we continue to bring them back into the fold, I must say in the most normal year yet, in a good way, the new normal, this year has actually been a year in which our students have been in our classrooms and we've returned to some of the traditions that our students and staff have missed. And I will tell you, I have been visiting schools every single week, many of the Board of Education members visiting our schools as well. And I will say that there is an excitement about the fact that we can get back to the things that we have long yearned for over the last couple of years, which is having that focus on teaching and learning and having our students in the school to be able to do it. So as we've come into this year and really looking at learning disruption, we know that our school system has made significant ground in literacy, but did not make that same progress in mathematics. So as we look at our data, we've been looking at literacy, being able to still, again, make progress in literacy in ways that mirror how some of the foundational skills that we've been seeing that we've had to emphasize, particularly for our students who were in those early years of learning to read, really putting supports in place like tutoring, additional supports during the school day for our students. And so we see that paying off with literacy, but mathematics, not so much. And more importantly, we're also seeing that decline more so in secondary mathematics. So as a result of that, we are really planning very intentionally of how we are identifying who those students are, identifying what those gaps are, and investing in making sure our teachers have everything they need to support them in the first instruction in the classroom. And then, of course, we have additional interventions that we put in place, like the tutoring, like additional support that we're providing to students to make sure that they're getting that extra learning time if we identify them as needing so. So second, as a result of that, we're going to continue to monitor the progress. We made an investment in making sure that we provided a staff development teacher full-time and a reading specialist in each of our elementary schools this year to make sure that we provided our teachers with the support that they need, knowing that they're going to need to know how to differentiate for those different learning needs in the classroom. So we're investing in their professional learning time, investing in our teachers to make sure they feel equipped to support our students. Second, as a result of the significant isolation that the pandemic imposed on our students, we continue to see serious incidents that are impacting our students and staff. Across the board, I will say that our system has been very, very intentional about how do we provide our students a safe environment, and that's mentally and physically. I'll talk about us setting in a very robust set of social, emotional, and mental health supports, more so than we've ever had in our school system. That includes, we have social workers, we have school psychologists, we have wellness spaces in our schools, we have wellness spaces in our classrooms. And it's one thing to talk about it, but as we go out and visit schools, I can tell you it's there. The way that our classrooms are designed now to make sure students feel comfortable taking breaks when they need to, going and writing notes to make them encourage conversation if they need to talk with an adult. Just giving them a mental break before they enter into a stressful situation, whether it may be them taking a test that they have anxiety about or whatever it may be. This year, when we open our doors, those spaces exist in our classrooms and throughout our schools, on bulletin boards everywhere. So when I say that we have really taken this wellness to the next level in Montgomery County Public Schools, we've taken it to the point where we see it just as important as the learning that our students have access to throughout the day. So I'm excited about that. Now, in addition to making sure that we have the social, emotional, and mental health supports, we also have increased our security staffing this year. We have rovers who are able to go around the system and provide safety and security support to our elementary schools. We recognize that that was an area that we wanted to increase, not just partnership around security, but making sure that if there are incidents that occur within the community, that our elementary schools also had access to safety and security within MCPS to support them. And again, I've seen this as quite a strong relationship building opportunity between those rovers in our schools. We've also bolstered our partnership with police partners and implemented, our CEO 2.0 program, which allowed us to be able to address exactly how we wanted to have that program work so that we were meeting our students' needs and they felt supported within their schools, but also felt safe. The third thing that I'll talk about quickly is staffing. Ms. Silvestri alluded to that. Yes, we are 99% staffed as a school system. And so we're very proud of that. I mean, I had an opportunity this summer to share nationally some of the strategies that we used in Montgomery County Public Schools. And I want our Maryland Municipal League to feel proud in that. And yes, we were acknowledged nationally because we were able to fill many of our staffing positions due to the credit of our Human Resources Office and many others in the system. And we're proud of that. But that 1% that still is not there, we still feel that. So we still are out doing recruiting efforts. Of course, recruiting in October, or quite frankly, after the opening of school, is much more difficult because mostly in the field of education, decisions have been made and people are where they're going to be, but we continue to work on that. Like right now, for instance, we're still hiring. We're looking at extending offers to those who will be graduating in December to make sure we're ramping up our efforts for next year. We're also working with our schools who do have those vacancies so that they can get a good qualified substitute, which is oftentimes our retired teaching force coming back to support in the classroom for our students. So this is ongoing work, and we are counting on you as valuable partners. If you know that there are constituents in your communities who are looking for ways to partner with the school system, especially if they have background or experience in education, we still welcome them into the folds of helping us to support staffing in Montgomery County Public Schools. So in all of these areas, I must say that the empowerment that local governments have to move us forward is powerful. A key driver in the implementation of how we connect as a system, school system, as well as a government, is implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future. If you don't know what that is, I ask you to take a moment when you have a chance to look it up. But that essentially is the blueprint for how all public school systems in the state of Maryland will be, or in the process of redesigning what the future of education looks like. And we are committed to and excited about the possibilities that are embedded in that blueprint. We have a blueprint coordinator, we have a team within MCPS, as well as a team across agencies in Montgomery County. And the goal is to be very transformative in our vision for how we are planning out the future for Montgomery County Public Schools in alignment with that blueprint. So the devil lies in the details, as I always say. So we're working with the state of Maryland to ensure that we have the guidance, flexibility, and resources we need to help every single student have a world-class education. And, you know, I wrote down a couple of things as I was thinking about coming to you tonight. There are some areas in the blueprint that really focus on, and actually I'll tell you what the 4 areas are. One are early childhood education and focusing on how that exists and what it looks like in public education. The second is making sure we have a high quality and diverse teaching and leadership program within our system. The third is making sure that we are college and career ready and the pathways that we have planned for our students. And the fourth is making sure that there are more resources available to ensure that all students are successful. And when I say all, I do mean all in Montgomery County Public Schools. So I was thinking, and as we think about those 4 different pillars in the blueprint, I thought about 3 things that I wanted to point out to you that I think are really important in your space as you think about advocacy for the school system and how you can become involved. One, the blueprint area that talks about increasing early childhood education. We now have an opportunity to have many private providers of pre-K opportunity to join public providers like the public school system. And so I know that you know that there are many private providers in your different communities, right? Or that may be constituents of yours. So if you can encourage them to really look at ways that they can become compliant with the blueprint requirements, that allows us to be able to partner with them so that we can expand and provide more pre-K opportunities to our students and families in Montgomery County Public Schools. So that's the one thing I wanted to share with you. The second area of the blueprint that I wanted to share with you is about, it's related to the college and career readiness pillar. And that one key program that we already have that we're going to continue to develop in that area is more growth in our dual enrollment programs. Now, many of our community college spaces also exist in your municipalities, you know, like City of Rockville, Tacoma Park, all of those areas. So the more that you're able to go out and be able to support and advocate for the community college, know that you're also benefiting MCPS in that way, because in many cases in our effort to increase dual enrollment, we're sharing many of our students now. And so that's a good thing for them and it's a good thing for us. So please see that we are very close in partnership in doing that. So continue to support them in any efforts they bring forward around implementation of the blueprint. And then the third piece that I just wanted to just share with you is, as we continue to think about ways that we diversify our teachers and leaders within Montgomery County Public Schools, I always say, everything that we need to diversify our profession in Montgomery County is already here. Because we are in one of the most diverse communities, I believe, in the world. And when I think about our schools, our students represent a very diverse community. We need them to come back to be the teachers and leaders in the school system. And so that means that we have to depend on our community to continue to encourage our young people to go into the field of education. It is one that is very rewarding. You are working to support your own community. And most importantly, when we invest in our children with talent, then that means we are taking care of our future. So if you as leaders can continue to encourage your constituents and your communities to have our students and make them feel comfortable and support them when they say, I want to become a teacher, or I want to become a leader in a school system, that's a very respected and honorable role to have within our school system. And so as a part of the blueprint, we are also looking at ways to raise the salary for our educators within the public school system. So that's our way of also showing that we want to respect it through making sure that we have a good comparable salary in education so that we can continue to have that support from our community to say that this is a respected profession. But we know that it's not only monetary that makes it respected, but it's how we see, feel, and make that connection to education to say this is a community effort. So I wanted to share those things with you because those are some key areas of work that we're involved in as a school system, and continuing to make progress in all of these areas requires that our local and state partners work in tandem, and that includes you, and I'm excited to continue to talk with you about any of those items. So I am going to kick it over to Seth really quickly to talk to you a little bit about where we are with the CIP. As he comes on to talk to you about that, I do want to say up front that what we're going to need your support, understanding, and continued conversation around is how do we be, how do we continue to think about where we are and what our priorities are within our CIP, and recognize that, that means that we have to oftentimes make choices. And how do we make those choices and communicate with our community in a very transparent way to know that if adjustments are made, what they are and why they are. So we're willing to come out and talk with our communities as much as possible, but we will be sharing that information once we present to the Board of Education any updates around our CIP. And if we need to come back and have a conversation to make sure you are understanding that, I know Seth and the team is prepared to do so. And before I kick it to Seth, one more thing. We're this year also going to be having budget community conversations. So more information is going to be coming out to you and others about that when we have the date settled. But once we put out information about the dates of those budget community conversations, if you could come out, if you can encourage your constituents to come out to be a part of that discussion, because when I do release the budget for our following year, 23, I don't want that budget to be one that everyone does not understand how it fits directly to the needs of the school system. And so our community conversations will be an opportunity for the Board of Education members, myself, and others to just have a good understanding of what's involved in development of a school system's budget. And how do we prioritize, and what are the things that should drive our priority based on how our students are doing. So those are the things that I wanted to share with you. And I'll kick it over to Seth to give you a quick update on CIP. Seth?
All right, thank you, Dr. McKnight. And I'll be very brief. So just to remind everyone, the county's CIP, Capital Improvements Program, is a biannual budget. So we're in our off year, meaning we're looking at it from a perspective of just trying to look at it from emergencies. What are the challenges? What are some of the obstacles that we're facing? Obviously, as you heard from Dr. McKnight, there are challenges. We are working through some unprecedented, cost increases and unprecedented material delays. But I think with that, it is actually a very exciting time. And one of the things that Dr. McKnight has really challenged us on is thinking very differently about partnerships. So how do we approach the Capital Improvements Program a little differently than what we have in the past? How do we start to think ahead of how to navigate the blueprint elements and provide spaces for students? But the great thing is right now we have projects in every corner of the county and everywhere in between, everywhere from Joe and Lullick over on the Eastern County up to Burtonsville, to Damascus, to Poolesville, down to the Silver Spring area and Tacoma Park. And then again, everything in between, including the city of Gaithersburg. And so it is a really exciting time for us. We're taking advantage of well over $200 million of state aid through the Built to Learn Act. So that's something that we all should be proud of, because everyone has been a big part of advocating for those funds. And we're also, building some great momentum off of Mayor Ashman and Dennis Enslinger, folks over in Gaithersburg, a model that has really brought together municipalities, obviously the county, the state, agencies such as DHHS, and just thinking differently about our projects and how we can take the dollar further. So that's a model that I think obviously should be nationally recognized, and one that hopefully we can continue further into our conversations, whether it be in Tacoma Park through Piney Branch and some of our planning discussions there, all the way up to Damascus and in Burtonsville. So again, it's challenging times, but I think we have a lot of opportunities in front of us, and through partnerships, I think we can navigate the storm of some of these unprecedented challenges. But looking forward to the release in a couple weeks. Dr. McKnight, just to remind everyone, her CIP recommendation will come out not this Friday, but the following Friday, and we'll start to have some robust community engagement, which I'm sure all of you will be a part of during our public hearings. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton. I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna say thank you. Incredible update, and we see how hard you are working, and we see all the challenges before you. So just first, we see you, we acknowledge what you're doing, and we really appreciate the time that you've been spending with us tonight, because I know you have a lot on your plate. I'm going to encourage my municipal colleagues, if they have questions, to either raise your hand and put them in chat, and feel free to do that. And I do have a few starter questions or comments We would love to continue to be strong partners for MCPS, and there were a couple of things that you sent to us that you'd love for us to help get the word out about. So I wonder if we might be able to get information from your communications team, because the extent that we can just have like, what is that, you know, that social media graphic that we can help extend to our community. A lot of us do have our own email list, and so just to help extend your reach, that would be fantastic. I will acknowledge, you know, one of those things is Tutor.me education you guys have been working with has been fantastic. Or whether you know, I know that this, for example, the city of Rockville, the READY, which is our economic development group, actually works with childcare providers and helps to get licenses. So like, if we can make those connections and get the word out, but not have to rewrite everything because you already have it, that would be extremely helpful. And then we can send it to all our municipal leaders who are part of the chapter, and we represent 21.
Absolutely. I saw Celia, our communications director. We will follow up and definitely take care of that. And actually, I think it would be beneficial if we just make sure we in some type of cadence share that with you so that you'll know what's coming up. You're right, because we're putting all of that together internally, and that's work that you don't need to redesign. And we're happy to share.
That would be great. In terms of the tutoring that you're doing, and some of the progress where you said there needs to be more done for mathematics, and we did see some of the disparities, that reports that came out recently. How are you ensuring that not just the parents who are really well connected on social and email are getting access to those resources? Because usually it's those who already, you know, have that connectivity that are the first to jump at the free tutoring and other, you know, resources that you have. But how are you getting the harder to reach populations?
Thank you. I am actually going to kick that one to Dr. Pugh, but I will say to you, even when we started with the tutoring, what we knew was that this was going to be a access and equity process that we were going to need to be able to monitor. Same thing we think about sometimes when we send out surveys, and we know that we're not going to hear from all of our families, but we know, you know, what families we may often hear from. And so the ones that we don't, how do we make sure we reach them? So I know we've been partnering with our schools specifically to do a lot of that outreach so that those principals and teachers who have the relationship with the families can really help to promote and influence the students that we need to engage. But Dr. Pugh?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And just like Dr. McKnight said, we do know the students who are struggling the most, and we do have data on them. We've been working with the students here in the first few weeks of school. They've been completing some assessments, and we've worked with schools to try and identify those students who might need those tutoring supports. So we have a strategic approach for those students because the school teams know that we are really monitoring whether or not those students are continuing to achieve. And so the reach out is as strategic as you have a list of students, are you able to reach them and provide additional support during school? And if not, are you able to connect them to some of our after school or tutoring programs, specifically either in person, or if that's a challenge for families, then the virtual option. So really cleaning up and trying to make sure we have correct and accurate emails and phone numbers for families so that we are getting connectivity with the information. That was another effort that was made. We send weekly reminders to the schools about the resources and what's upcoming, things that they can cut and paste in multiple language to share to their communities. So I agree with you. It really is about encouraging those students who need it to really be able to they and their families have access to tutoring that isn't necessarily invasive on driving or transportation, but that is available in their own home. So those are a few of the extra things that are being done this year to make sure that our families have the information that they need.
Thank you. Do any of our municipal colleagues have questions? If not, I have some that I've collected ahead of time. One of the things that we've been seeing in some of our municipalities is an increase of fighting, especially after some sporting events. It's not unique to Montgomery County. We're seeing it in places like Philly, and where it's getting very dangerous. And so as parents and as, you know, municipal leaders, we're trying to help support you all with our police forces, those of us who have them. But it's unnerving to drop your child off at a game and want to be sure that they can come home safely. So what are some of the things you're doing in that regard?
Yes, I mean, I tell you, it's very interesting. I know that you all have seen the numerous emails that I've sent out to the community, just really sharing how we decided to take the approach of our athletic activities this year, taking into consideration that, you know, the environment has changed in so many different ways. And we saw that here in Montgomery County Public Schools. So I'm actually going to have Dr. Murphy talk a little bit about our process of what we've done. We don't want to be repetitive, but of course we've put in a tiered approach for our games, and based on where the schools fall in that tiered approach, that then determines you know, what types of things that we would do to adjust if we felt like the adjustments needed to be made. But Dr. Murphy, I'll let you talk about that.
All right. Thank you, Dr. McKnight, and good evening again. I do want to just make a note that the plan that we were able to initiate here earlier in the season, or the fall season, was driven to a large extent by a team of people that are actually on this call. Brian Hull, Dana Edwards, Ed Clark, Brian Stockton, I think were some of the key people that played kind of pivotal roles, along with Jeff Sullivan, who's in charge of our athletic program, but he is not here this evening. And so we collaborated with principals, also community members, our PTAs, different leaders in our community, to kind of tell them, you know, these are some of the issues that we're facing. We want our athletic events to continue, but how can we make sure that those students that come to those events are safe, we practice good sportsmanship, and they are an event that we can be proud of. So we put a variety of different practices in place. I think many of the folks that are on this call also this evening, we felt it was pivotal for the folks in the central office to get out to many of the games that are going on, and we're continuing to do that so we can play a supportive role alongside the schools, and also communicate that we're all in this together. We did work with many of the community members and let them know why we were doing it, how we felt we would accomplish that, and then what steps we were going to take. And some of those steps included that for children that are not of high school age, that if they wanted to come to the game, they needed to be accompanied by a parent. We also restricted some of the ins and outs at our main gate, and kind of restricted who was coming in and how they were coming in. And then we wanted to make sure that when students were entering, they were students from either the home school or the visiting school. So we had a pretty good handle on who was at the events. Some of the things that we're discovering, and I may be generalizing here a little bit, but some of the things we were discovering that many of the issues that we were having did not have any connection directly with the students who are either attending our schools. They may have been older students, previous members of our community who were coming in. And so we really wanted to be able to control that so that we could have successful sporting events. We have been able to accomplish that. I think the police or law enforcement has really been pivotal to that, and they've been great partners. And I want to thank Ed Clark for being the liaison or the bridge to be able to make that happen. But we were also able to use MCPS security staff and our administrators to have a strong presence at the game. And we changed some of our practices. I will tell you, I was at Rockville one evening, and just how the students were circulating in and out to the concession stand. And I really credit the principal there, Ms. Piles, for making that adjustment. So we've had to rethink a couple of things. So we've got good crowd flow. And we also wanted to communicate to the students what the expectations were for our athletic contests. So we've got some good practices in place. I think we've been, real clear with our community what those expectations are. And I applaud our students. Our students have really stepped up, and they've been a key ingredient in making this a successful plan. We were able to pull back on what I'll call those tier 1 approaches for all other athletic contests except football or varsity football. And I think that's been a success, being sensitive to the parents who may be coming from work or games that are at, in the early evening. So that's been, productive. But overall, I think we're in a good place. I think it's really about communicating expectations, explaining why it's important that we keep these athletic contests safe. And we've seen a lot of things as a result of that move in the right direction. I think we've got 3 more weeks of varsity football before the playoffs start. And so, we'll kind of continue on the path that we're on, but it has been a team effort. And I think your voice in communicating, why we've done this and where we are right now, I think will really kind of permeate the community about the expectations we have moving forward into winter athletics, where we are going to need to evaluate what we're doing with winter athletics as well. So I'll stop there. Dr. McKnight, I don't know if there's any questions, or if Mr. Hall or Ms. Edwards or Ed Clark want to add anything additional.
I think that was a great summary.
I'd like to ask a question related to the topic you just discussed. I'm way past having young children, but I do pick up my grandchildren at various schools in Montgomery County. And just a couple weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, we went to Parkland School, middle school, and got my granddaughter, who's 13. Anyway, she started relating to us a story about a fight in the cafeteria where the kids were fighting. They knocked the kid down there violently, hitting him, and on top of it all, there are kids there standing there with their phones, egging the kids on and saying, hit him again, I'm filming this. And then they sent it to all the kids. I don't know how they do this electronically, but they sent it to all the kids that were in the near vicinity somehow. And that video went all around. My question is, did the school know about this? I mean, I know there was a teacher, at least one, in the cafeteria, but are you aware of something like that? It's not even a sporting event. It's in the cafeteria. So what do you do about that?
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Murphy.
All right, I thought I'd jump in there. Yes, we are aware of those things. We have a very robust incident reporting system. And I think one of the things, and it is unfortunate that events like that do occur, but I think one of the things we want to communicate to students is an expectation of taking care of their peers and what responsibility they have. While they may not be directly involved or a witness, to the situation, what do they have as a responsibility when things like this happen? And so I know our principals work very closely with their counselors. They also work very closely with, families in communicating those expectations and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Unfortunately, we've gotten into a very digital culture. And as a result of that, sometimes this is how students are responding. So we need to work with them and communicate what those expectations are. But more importantly, we need to tell them what their responsibility is in the big picture. And sometimes these behaviors are not the responsibilities that we want to see as adults, nor that we want to see from them as they grow up and they mature. But I do want to tell you, we have a pretty comprehensive incident response team. And those responses are recorded, and our building principals and administrators are taking action when these things like this happen.
Absolutely. And I wanted to add one other thing onto that. And I did see the question in the chat around having enough tutors to meet additional help. So as Dr. Pugh will, I'll turn to her in a moment to address that question in the chat. But first, let me say thank you for being an involved grandparent. and that's important, because we actually need everybody in our community, whether you have a current child in the system or not, to be involved and invested. And as your example was perfect, because it is who's picking them up from school or who our children may spend time with. It may be a caregiver outside of a parent who they share these experiences with. So when they share these things with you as a community member, and I encourage you to have this, to share with your constituents, the messages that we give within the school system have to be reinforced outside of the school system. So the proper use of social media, how to use social media for positive and not negative, and taking care of your neighbor are just some basic things that we re-emphasize with our students all the time. But as they share these things with you, just encourage them to continue to share that with their peers. No, that's not something that you would record someone being hurt or harmed. And how would you recording that help the situation? We have a program called Leader in Me. If you have time and watch our board meetings, you'll often see sometimes some of our staff or students coming and advocating about that program. That's one of the programs that we have in our schools that we've been implementing that really does get students to reflect on how do they make good choices and good decisions, and how can they become leaders. And it addresses those things like when you are involved in a situation, positive or negative, how do you lead for good? And this starts the conversation in the elementary school that we know that we want to continue in secondary. So reinforcing the messages that we actually teach in school, I think is really key. Thank you. Dr. Pugh, I see that question around, do we have enough tutors to meet the need for additional help? Can I turn to you for that?
Sure. So thank you for the question. We are in a unique space where we're able to use some virtual tutoring, and we're able to use in-person tutoring. So we can meet the needs of different types of learners. So we have enough that we can tutor any student who needs it. Where I would ask for community help is, the tutoring that we have that we're offering at the schools, that in-person tutoring with translation and different sign language interpreters, those may be spaces where we could use additional community support and additional people who have those talents who are willing to work with students. So yes, we have capacity, and yes, any student who needs it can make it. But if we prioritize in-person learning and building that relationship with the learner, people are the best to do that on a consistent basis.
I was going to add, just because I have some personal experience in my community, that you all have, people can sign up for regular tutoring. I know there's a little bit of a backlog because it was a big request, but you guys do have on-demand tutoring through your partner, TutorMe, as I mentioned earlier, and it works, because I heard from some people this week. So I just wanted to note that.
That's great feedback. And there are two companies that we work with that offer that service on demand for as students need it in the home. I think that went out in the community message this week. So if you need those numbers, I'm happy to put that in the chat.
If you have like a social graphic or something you can share it with us, some of us would love to get that out on social and in our newsletters, but that is fantastic. Thank you. All right, I'm just checking for additional questions before I go to the list that I've received ahead of time. Okay. On the dual enrollment component, is space an issue, or are you feeling that you still have a lot of opportunity for folks to do that?
So dual enrollment, I want to make sure I understand the question. Do you mean physical space to accommodate students who are in our dual enrollment program?
Yeah, so is there a capacity issue on that? And I would say that program, the other one I've heard from some community members is the Summer Rise, where there were, I think, 1,000 more students who tried to get into Summer Rise than were able to be accommodated. So it may be just a blip because of COVID and people looking to get, but I just want to get an understanding of how are we doing on capacity on some of those extra opportunity programs.
Okay, so I'll start with Summer Rise. We would have to be able to follow back up with you on that. I can't say right now that I was aware of a blip. I do know this year has been very different in terms of many people looking for resources and waiting to see what the year was going to look like with COVID, and then making decisions later. So that could be the case, but we'd have to follow back up unless someone on the line has some current information on that. In terms of dual enrollment, I'm going to say no, that is not, especially knowing that as a requirement for the blueprint, we're actually going to be doubling the opportunity for dual enrollment for our students. So we will stay in contact with you about that. I mean, that's something that we're going to be working closely with all of our municipalities on, given that our blueprint guidance and actually our expectation is that we are increasing significant numbers for our students to be involved in dual enrollment. Dr. Pugh, do you want to add a comment?
Sure. If I might add, you've done an amazing job. I can't take any credit at all for this in building the dual enrollment program. We're going to share some information at the next board meeting about what the actual enrollment numbers, but it was during the pandemic when most people were not seeing this. Montgomery County saw a significant growth in dual enrollment and also in their career technical education completers, where students earn an industry certification. What we will have to work on with our with Montgomery College and higher education is that expansion of some of those programs and making sure that they're leading to 2- and 4-year completers and also technical certifications where students can earn certificates and go right into a job, a high-paying career. So I think that you should be proud of the expansion that's occurred. You've served way more students in a time when that was a challenge. But we're also excited about the opportunity to grow new programs that would help serve the community. So the interest in the computer science area and computer science for all as a growing industry in our area, as well as quantum computing, is a new frontier that we're exploring, looking for pathways for students, starting with pathways early on in elementary school, giving students experience with computational thinking, robots, B-bots, OSBots, all of that type of thinking that leads to exploration of a career that then we can connect with our community schools to make sure that we have good, viable pathways to help them go through Montgomery College and then on to university if that's the path that they choose. So you have a lot to be proud of, and we'll continue to build that partnership.
Thank you. 2 questions, one in chat and one I got via text, that relate to understanding school construction and where we are. Are any of the school construction programs be affected by supply chain issues that has delayed times for facilities and be brought back online? It sounds like maybe that's a yes, but given the comments that you've shared. And then I got some specific questions about Crown, since that affects multiple schools, and the Wooten RevX.
So I'll turn it over to Seth. I will say, just like anything else, any house that's being built now that may have started a year or so ago, we all know the impact of inflation and how that truly has impacted costs in every way possible with any construction happening during this time. And our school construction is not, you know, we are included in construction that's been impacted significantly in that way financially. So Seth?
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, we are having to rethink everything about our construction approach just based on how sort of the scarce some of our materials are, and it is leading to some delays. You know, not as many as you would think, because we are really trying to mitigate. But projects like Crown High School, just as a reminder, you know, the board has been advocating for these projects to open earlier. You know, they're critically important because at the high school level, all the schools that school will relieve are trending over capacity. They're already over capacity and trending even higher as we get closer to the opening date. But right now, Crown High School is in design, and it is expected to break ground within a year or so with a 2027 opening. The Wooten project was unfortunately delayed by county council by 2 years. But as you may remember with Wooten, we did advocate for site-related funds to really focus on the safety of our students. You know, so we're going to look to see how we can improve the vehicular, pedestrian, bus drop-offs on that site ahead of the major capital project that will be coming down the line. So yeah, there's a couple unfortunate delays, but you know, we are obviously really pressing, and I think you'll see in Dr. McKnight's recommendation in a couple weeks, you know, she is you know, really looking at these as high priorities and is responding accordingly.
Thank you very much for that. And how would we find out, I guess, find out as more real time, you know, if they're going to be delayed even further? What's the best way to keep up to date on that?
So the challenge is, so we certainly don't delay these projects, right? So if it's a funding issue, you know, the board advocates, goes to the county executive, and then ultimately a decision of the county council. So when the CIP process takes shape, you'll see the superintendent's recommendation in a couple weeks. The board's formal request will happen right around December. So we'll know a bit more about what that board's request look like. And then ultimately the county executive comes out with his budget in mid-January. And that's when, you know, if the budgets don't align, if there's shortfalls in revenue and things are not looking as maybe as bright as we would hope, even from a bond perspective, that's when some of those conversations around potential delays or reductions or other things happen. So I would say, you know, that time frame of February, March, April is really critical when we're having those discussions with the county council. The conversations around you know, spending affordability guidelines are going to be key this year. Really understanding, you know, recordation tax, impact taxes, it's going to be key this year. So, you know, those conversations in December and January and February are going to be of utmost importance to, I think, all of us on this call.
Thank you. And we will work to advocate with you. The next question relates to what you talked about, staffing. So the person is saying, we're so thankful to see that many of the positions have been filled. Wanted to check on student-teacher ratios. How are those looking? And then are you having any issues related to ESSER funding money running out that supported aid positions? I don't know if that's an accurate statement of, you know, whether that has run out or not, but that was the question I received and wanted to share it.
Thank you. I'll turn to Dr. Marks in just a moment to address the ratio question. But the first is, and we've been sharing with our community, and one of the reasons that we are going to have our community budget conversations too is because we want everybody to see the big picture. Next year will be the last year of our ESSER funding available to the school system. And yes, we do have a number of positions that we have used ESSER funding for to help address some of the needs that came about during the pandemic that we needed to have the additional supports in place to support students when they return to the building. So we are carefully looking at what those positions are, taking into consideration what positions are going to be vital and how we prepare to consider the impact of those supports and think about what needs to be in our foundation, which is our operational budget. Okay, so that is something that we're looking at. And we are not waiting until next year to do that, but that's a process that we're starting now. And so as we go through the budget discussion, you know, we'll be very transparent and saying this is something that we are, you know, maybe moving from grant funding to our operating budget. And if we find it necessary, here's why we find that support necessary, so that we don't find ourselves when we're at the cliff of ESSER funding ending, impacting us in a way that we have not planned for. Dr. Marks?
And when there is a sub filling a position, the student teacher ratio is still the same in terms of we have a qualified sub in the classroom. And so there's not necessarily more kids than you would expect. Also, we do work with principals in the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing, works with their principals to look at their schedules. They may be able to collapse a class to make sure that we're meeting the guidelines for staffing. So with that kind of support, and also we're still hiring, we found a great physics teacher a couple of weeks ago, and that was after the school year started and the teacher was referred and we got that teacher in place. So we are continuing to staff. We're continuing to hire qualified substitutes. We would love for community members to know that they can apply to be substitutes, and we would love to have them. I want to also say, not only are we hiring teachers, but we need also secretaries and paraeducators and maintenance. So in your communities, if you know people who are interested in that, Montgomery County is a great place to work. We have great benefits and it's a great place to work. We monitor the class size, especially in our collaboration with the Office of Student Support and Wellbeing, to make sure that we're meeting those guidelines. And may I also say that we are recruiting now, and really, as Dr. McKnight said, looking at our December grads, and actually our recruitment team is also very, very focused on trying to continue to diversify our teacher workforce. And they really do go to places that graduate students, Latinx students or Asian students going into teaching, because we really want to diversify our workforce. And I think we have a couple of our recruitment teams in Texas this week, really trying to recruit people from Texas and telling them how nice it is for them to come and live in the North.
You have to get creative. I see Mayor Ashman has his hand up.
Thanks so much, Monique. So I don't really have a question so much as a series of comments. First off, I want to thank our colleagues on the Board of Ed for taking the time to be with us. And I want to thank Dr. McKnight and all of this new blood you have on your team. It's great to meet everybody. So for those who don't know me, I'm Judd Ashman. I'm the mayor of Gaithersburg. Seth Adams it was very nice to shout us out early in his initial remarks. And I just have to say, I mean, there are a number of municipalities represented here tonight, but there are a few in Montgomery County who I don't see. And I cannot stress enough how valuable, how important, what dividends it's paid for our community to have such a strong partnership with MCPS. And I would encourage all municipal officials to do what you can to cultivate good relationships with this important organization in our community who's doing like the most important work that can be done. Also want to note that I am, even though my kids are long since graduated from high school, I still go to the high school football games every week. And I appreciate what you've done in terms of security. I was not at the Gaithersburg game that night. I go to the Quince Orchard games usually, but I've seen the results of decisions that you guys have made. I will say the incident that happened at Gaithersburg High School was an anomaly. I've been going to games for like 17 years since my kid was on the team. And I haven't seen a situation get out of hand like that. It's really an unusual thing. So just to add a little perspective to it. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everybody and really appreciate what you do and appreciate our partnership. So thank you. I'll hand it back to Monique.
Thank you so much, Judd. I will also say, beyond many of the things that you've mentioned, Dr. McKnight, of how municipalities can get involved, I will just share the city of Rockville has partnered on a Linkages to Learning program and actually have funded staff support for one of our area schools. We also do some work to support unaccompanied minors and do some work to support at-risk children and go into school for navigation and tutoring. So there are many ways MCPS, I know, welcomes help, whether it's, helping to support a new school development or helping to support service needs. So we have appreciated the partnership and, always value the time that you come to be with us because it gives us more ideas on what we can do to partner. With that, I'm just going to see if there are any final questions. I know it is getting late and we really appreciate your time. I don't want to take advantage of it. So, and if there's anything else, we'd be happy to follow up with your team. But I will then close us out and say thank you. You are doing, the most important work in helping to raise our future leaders. And we have seen how you have flexed and have really responded to a changing community. There's been a lot of trauma that, many of our children have faced, and it's been important for you all. I know that you're in charge of educating, but you've also been an important part of the social framework that our kids can help lean on. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having us, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. You are amazing partners, and just know that, anything that we're able to accomplish for our students, we cannot do without you. Ms. Silvestri.
Well, thank you so much, and let's keep the lines of communication open. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.